A modern, heavily encrypted firewall will successfully repel millions of automated brute force attacks. The cryptographic math works. Yet, an attacker can still bypass that entire defensive perimeter simply by asking a user to open the door. The text bubble illustrates social engineering. It is an attack strategy that ignores software vulnerabilities and targets the human operating the machine. Social engineering is the deliberate manipulation of human psychology. Instead of writing malicious code to exploit a server, attackers manipulate a user's identity, perception, and decision-making processes to extract access credentials. Computer science students engineering tomorrow's networks face a persistent reality. The most hardened, cryptographically secure system is only as strong as the human operating it. In a physical workspace, identity is anchored to a recognizable human being. In cyberspace, identity is a constructed artifact. Because digital presence relies entirely on data inputs, human interaction becomes an inherent, unpatched system vulnerability. Because humans are the ultimate attack surface, designing a secure network requires a structural shift. Modern cybersecurity architecture must move away from assuming implicit trust and instead engineer explicit verification protocols that account for psychological manipulation. This diagram maps the self in cyberspace. A user's singular, real-world identity rarely translates directly to the internet. Instead, it fragments into multiple, highly fluid and highly untrustworthy digital personas. This fragmentation creates identity fluidity. Across different platforms, users routinely hide their flaws, exaggerate specific personality traits, or fabricate entirely new personas from scratch. This fluidity operates primarily in two modes. The first is absolute anonymity, where a user's real identity is completely hidden. The second is pseudonymity, where a user operates under an alternate, fabricated identity. Operating behind these digital masks creates the online disinhibition effect. The physical separation between the user and their audience reduces their sense of personal accountability. Consequently, users behave much more openly and often more aggressively than they would in a physical setting. This psychological disinhibition leads directly to degraded security hygiene. Users willingly overshare sensitive personal data on public feeds and routinely ignore standard risk assessments when engaging with complete strangers. Attackers actively weaponize this environment. By generating fake personas, an attacker smoothly simulates shared interests or connections to establish false trust with a target. A digital self is highly fluid and entirely constructed by user inputs. Therefore, a secure system architecture must never implicitly trust the persona presenting the access credentials. When a digital self interacts with a platform, it generates an online identity. This is the measurable, interactive digital footprint left behind by a user's behavior. This table breaks down online identity types by their inherent risk to a system. Identities are categorized into real, which pose a medium risk, partial, which carry a high risk, and completely fake identities, presenting very high risk. Each type is constructed from personal, behavioral, and social data nodes. Real and partial identities expose baseline personal information. Data points like legal names, university affiliations, and physical locations provide the exact foundational data required to execute identity theft. The behavioral data node tracks browsing habits and purchase patterns. By analyzing this continuous stream of interactions, attackers can build highly accurate psychological profiles of their targets. Finally, mapping a user's social connections provides an attacker with a clear, visible roadmap of established trust relationships ready to be exploited. Attackers use this data for impersonation. By mimicking an authoritative source, like sending a fake, urgent email disguised as the UM/UIT department, an attacker can trick a student into entering their actual password into a cloned login page to steal credentials. Another method is profile cloning. An attacker creates an exact duplicate of a target's trusted friend on a social media platform. A message from this cloned account easily bypasses the target's initial suspicion. These attacks are fueled by data harvesting. This is the automated scraping of personal, behavioral, and social components from public databases to formulate hyper-targeted campaigns. Spear phishing is a cyber attack that uses personalized messaging to trick a specific individual into revealing sensitive information. A user's routine digital existence generates open-source intelligence. attackers compile this freely available data to execute unauthorized system access, achieving full network compromise without writing a single line of malware. Social engineering attacks are not random guesses. They are calculated deployments of psychological triggers, carefully matched to a target's observed daily habits. This 2D threat matrix maps out how attackers strike. The vertical axis shows the core persuasion techniques: authority, urgency, scarcity, trust, and reciprocity. The horizontal axis tracks common social media behaviors. Consider the behavior of oversharing. If a student publicly posts about their severe exam stress at UUM, that data point becomes an immediate vector for targeted spear phishing. An attacker weaponizes that specific post by combining it with the authority and urgency triggers. They send the student a fake, time-sensitive exam schedule update from the administration, which contains a malicious payload. Similarly, attackers map emotional and impulsive reactions directly to the urgency trigger. Artificially induced panic, like a warning that an account will be deleted in 10 minutes, overrides a user's critical verification skills. The inherent trust users place in their online relationships is also heavily exploited. When an attacker compromises a user's account, they use that established trust to distribute malware to mutual connections under the guise of a friendly request. Platform design amplifies these risks. The continuous pursuit of likes, comments, and social validation trains users into habitual, repetitive behavior. Habitual scrolling conditions the brain for passive consumption. This automatic physical action reduces situational awareness, causing users to reflexively click malicious links without conscious thought. The user interface of modern social media inadvertently conditions individuals to operate on autopilot. This leaves them highly susceptible to the exact psychological triggers that attackers weaponize for network infiltration. You cannot issue a software patch to fix human impulsivity. No amount of encryption will prevent a user from willingly handing over their password to an attacker they believe is a trusted authority. This diagram shows how modern system architecture must proactively compensate for the human node. Since the user is the primary vulnerability, the system must wrap their interactions in verifiable protective layers. The first architectural defense is implementing privacy by default logic. By severely limiting the initial data exposure of a user's profile, system designers cut off the open-source intelligence that attackers rely on for reconnaissance. The second defense is designing behavior-aware alerts. These are interface friction points that physically interrupt automatic, habitual clicking, forcing the user into active cognitive engagement before a destructive action can occur. The third defense is deploying AI-based anomaly detection. This tracks behavioral data to flag uncharacteristic network actions, such as a login from an impossible location, and halts the session, even if the correct cryptographic credentials are provided. For computer science students, immediate operational defense begins with strict data hygiene. You must manually verify digital identities through secondary, out-of-band communication channels, and ruthlessly audit your own public data exposure. It requires applying rigorous, algorithmic critical thinking to all digital communications. You must actively parse incoming messages for manufactured urgency, scarcity, and emotional manipulation. Digital identity is fluid, and human perception is hackable. In modern cybersecurity architecture, system trust must always be explicitly verified and never assumed.